If you found out that your eco driving was actually costing you money in the long run, would you still do it? If it was a case of saving maybe 50 pence per journey, but adding 50 pence of extra wear and tear on your car every time you drive it, would that make you think more seriously about changing your driving style? In this video, we're going to be talking about some very common eco driving things that people do that may actually be reducing the lifespan of our engine. First up, I have to say, don't be paranoid. We're talking about increasing wear and tear on the engine, not completely destroying it or blowing it up in a very short period of time. Now, the first big thing is the assumption that low RPM equals better fuel economy. The idea is that as the engine is moving more slowly, we're using less fuel, and that's actually a bit of a myth. Now, a lot of this is going to vary depending on the engine we've got, but generally speaking, you'll get better fuel economy at the peak efficiency range of your engine, and that is very rarely at the low RPM range. There's normally a midpoint at which the engine is producing the best fuel economy, and just sitting at that low RPM, firstly, it's not giving us the extra fuel economy that we assumed it would, and secondly, we risk lugging the engine. Now, low RPM lugging is like riding a bicycle uphill in the wrong gear. Your legs are doing a lot more work. If we're forcing the engine to lug, if we're working against the mechanical advantage, the engine is working far too hard to make any progress, and we're putting strain on the engine, so we're causing spikes inside the engine. The peak cylinder pressures will be spiking. There'll be additional wear and tear on the bearings, the pistons, the rods, and all the connecting components as they try to deliver the power, although the RPM is at a ridiculously low level. The simple remedy to avoiding those problems and that extra wear and tear on our engine is just using the correct gear, using the correct RPM range. It's going to vary a little bit depending on whether we're going uphill or whether we're just cruising along, and also the engine type we've got. If it's a small turbocharger or a large V8 engine, they will have different characteristics, but explore and find that peak efficiency part of the RPM range and try to stay in that, and choose an appropriate gear matched to what the car is actually having to deliver at the time. Now, another thing that people associate with eco driving is driving very gently, coasting along, for example, or again, low RPM driving. And this has the effect of lowering the temperature of the engine. Now, a low temperature engine to a certain extent is less efficient than one that is at the operating temperature. The big problem we've got with engines, and the engine being too cool, is it produces an excess of carbon, which eventually gets dumped on the intake. If we've got a direct injection engine, that is quite a serious problem, although manufacturers have gone some way to mitigate the implications of this on more recent engine design. Another eco thing is short trips. We may plan to do multiple short journeys, trying to use the car as little as possible, and it's usually best to try and wrap those short trips into a longer journey. The big problem with short trips is obviously the cold start, that first few minutes of starting a cold engine, and that goes away when we've done multiple short trips. So just combining those short trips into the same day when the engine is warm can go a long way to protecting the engine. The problem with these short trips that people do is the toll that it takes on the oil. The oil degrades. It's not lubricating correctly because it doesn't get up to the operating temperature. Modern thinner oils are more likely to be up to operating temperature more quickly, and that's really what manufacturers have done in a lot of modern hybrids. They've chosen very thin formulations of oil, and they've manufactured the components in the engine accordingly, that you don't have to wait as long for it to reach its optimum lubrication. These short trips also tend to dump more fuel into the engine itself. Those higher cylinder pressures that we mentioned can force past the piston rings the fuel, and because it's not burning cleanly, that fuel will eventually collect in the oil, degrading the oil's ability to protect and lubricate the engine. Some eco drivers will insist on coasting. They'll dip the car into neutral, or they depress the clutch and allow the car to just coast along. And the idea behind that is that the engine is running at very low RPM and it's using very little fuel, but the reality is somewhat different from that. An engine that is not connected to the car itself as it's driving along is needing to use fuel to keep it turning over. And if we were on a gradual decline, for example, you will in most cases use more fuel in neutral coasting down than you would do leaving it in gear and just letting the car run along. This also increases the risk of affecting the braking system, and in a modern automatic, coasting along in neutral can cause problems when it re-engages, and coasting in winter, for example, can also cause the engine temperature to plummet right down if there's no heat going on in the engine because we've turned it off, or we are literally just coasting along on tick over. The engine heat is going to drop, and that is going to cause the cold start problems or the excessive cold start wear and tear. Now, as I said at the beginning, we're not talking about destroying the engine or killing the engine in very short periods of time. We're just talking about maybe taking 20 or 30,000 miles off the lifespan of the engine, and in some cases we might be running up additional maintenance bills or additional repair bills that we could have avoided had we not been so insistent on following a lot of these eco driving myths that people do. In conclusion then, we have to say that eco driving, there is a balance there. If we are stressing our engine or degrading the engine oil, we are going to be running up more costs than we are potentially saving by using less fuel. And in a lot of cases, we're not using as little fuel as we thought. We may well have done better just choosing a different gear and choosing a higher point in the RPM range. So let us know what engine you've got as well, because that helps us all to build up a rounded out picture. We can compare our notes with your notes and deepen our understanding of how to get the best out of our engine. If you've enjoyed this video, please boot that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so. A lot of you aren't subscribed already, and that really would help us to get out there with the algorithm. And I've lined up this video and this playlist that you should find really interesting. Thanks for watching. See you in these next videos.